Isaiah Rivera is one of the highest jumpers in the entire world. He's been on the rise as a professional dunker over the last few years, and we've seen some progress that is absolutely jaw-dropping, from dunks that will make your head spin to gains in the gym alongside his coach, John Evans. This guy never ceases to impress. Today we're going to be taking a look at what makes Isaiah Rivera fly so high from a technical standpoint, from a jump technique standpoint. I'm Tyler Ray, aka The Jump Guy, and you're tuned in to Project Pure Athlete. So we're going to be taking a look at this jump here from Isaiah. This is a recent vertical jump test, a full approach jump. This one measured, I believe, 47 inches. Look at this. Let's just appreciate this first and foremost. My man's head, and I know the angles here play a little bit of a role, but this guy's head is over the rim. So we are jumping out of the gym straight out of the gate. But what we have here is a really good example of the Project Pure Athlete principles of jump technique, and I think we'd be doing ourselves a disservice here if I didn't lay these out for you and really focus in on a few key points today. We're going to be paying attention to, number one, torso position through our penultimate stride. We're going to take a look at our relationships of our center of mass to our contact points, to our feet, and how important that is to pay attention to or be aware of as a jumper. And then lastly, we're going to take a look at the arms and then the mobility of the shoulders. So let's kind of watch this here into our crucial strides. What you'll notice is that this part of the clip plays in full speed. And what Isaiah does a phenomenal job of here is a smooth acceleration. We talked about this in our last video with Connor, but the importance of smooth acceleration. If we come out of the gate too fast, if Isaiah starts his approach too quickly, what will happen is our body is a phenomenal mechanism where it will help to kind of auto-regulate and slow us down naturally to be able to control a lot of our speed. It won't necessarily slow us down all the way, and what will happen is we're going to be blowing through a lot of these really crucial points of contact. And what that means is you won't be able to control them, and you'll end up taking off on a very shallow angle because we're not able to stabilize the movement through a lot of these really important movers and joints. So Isaiah does a really good job of progressive acceleration into his approach. We got a slightly longer stride here into the setup of our penultimate. At times, this can be troublesome. I would suggest that if you're more of a beginner athlete, that this stride, our setup stride into our penultimate, is a little bit shorter than you see here, so that we can get this foot, this right foot, a little bit more underneath the hip, which will make the pushing motion here a little bit easier for those that don't have the high degree of strength that Isaiah possesses. And what you'll see is he does a good job here of initiating this push as he slips his hips over top. His center of mass is already slightly lowered, so you'll see that he sinks down into this right leg here. And then he transitions, so this becomes the toe off of our penultimate stride. As he starts to push here, he creates that really intentful push. And that's the important key to remember is intent, intent, intent. We want intent behind the movement. These aren't passive movements. They are purposeful and they are covering distance. So we push this stride. This helps to accentuate the acceleration that we've created through the initiation of the approach. It also helps to, as you can see here, lower the hips. So let's zoom in a little bit and we'll creep forward. You can see Isaiah's hips start to lower, and that helps to really isolate this left leg here to store that potential energy to be released later into kinetic output. What we see here is as he pushes, what we want to pay really close attention to. Note this position. This is very important. As he toes off into the penultimate, he remains tall. We want to be tall as we push. If the goal is to jump as high as you can, it's about managing our center of mass in relationship to the key points of contact. As I transition forward here, what you're going to notice that by staying tall, he keeps his center of mass well back behind this contact point. This is going to give him sufficient time to be able to store and release energy and apply a really solid break with this foot, our last contact, or our block foot. So as he makes contact here, this position that he's in currently, so we'll take a look at the left foot. This is our plant foot. The plant foot is our primary power source. This makes contact with the ground, and because his center of mass is in behind, we're still prioritizing verticality. If his center of mass was too far forward, let's say for instance he had collapsed from the hip far forward into this excessive flexion, as he transitions through this plant, his center of mass would continue to move forward and forward, so that when he finally extended the jump, he would be on a very shallow angle and he'd end up taking off shallow, blowing through this takeoff and, well, destroying his chances of jumping 4 feet in the air. So he does a really good job of staying tall. That's what we found definitively through a case study we ran here, is that tall torso, the athletes that exhibit lesser amount of hip flexion at this point of contact right here. The lesser degree of hip flexion will result in a steeper angle of takeoff. It's a relationships game. It's a relationships game. So he does a great job of keeping that center of mass in behind that foot. You see, as he transitions through, his center of mass is still behind his plant foot. This is difficult. This takes a high degree of strength and stability in a lot of his joints and tissues to be able to withstand the acceleration, because he's coming really fast. When he throws these contact points down, that creates deceleration. That also creates an exceptional amount of lengthening through a lot of these tissues. So eccentric loading, it takes strength. So we never undervalue the importance of progressive resistance training over time in conjunction with understanding jump technique. They work hand in hand. They're married, and they should always be worked hand in hand. If you're serious about jumping, you will work technique alongside your strength training. As he initiates his push, you'll also note that Isaiah's arms are back in what we call a bilateral pendulum style arm swing. He's doing a great job of utilizing mobility through the shoulder. He has a good amount of mobility. I know he has good stability there too, because I've seen him train. Mobility is required to be able to get the arms back like this without jeopardizing the angle. Remember, we talked about the angle of the torso? If there is limited mobility in the shoulder and an athlete is trying to get their arms way back and up high, what will happen is the torso will start to fall forward. Well, we know that the further forward that torso goes, the more we jump on a shallow angle. So it's important that we take advantage of some of the mobility and movement information that we have out there to optimize shoulder mobility. If you're lacking, if you're tight in your shoulders, a lot of times this can be due to tissues that surround the shoulders just being a little bit too tight. It could be the capsule itself, could be the shoulder itself that needs to be assessed. If you're not sure, not aware whether it's a tissue or a joint problem, talk to a professional about that, someone that can assess you properly. But if it's a tissue issue, it wasn't meant to rhyme, but it did, a tissue issue, then it can be some soft tissue work, a little bit of mobilizations. For me, my shoulders were tight a lot of times because my lats, my back, were very tight. It restricted the shoulder blade from moving smoothly through all ranges of motion. So it's just something to note, but the importance of shoulder mobility so we don't jeopardize, right? We don't jeopardize this here. This is money. We don't want to jeopardize that. So as he transitions into that plant, what I want you to pay attention to now is the timing of this. The contact point of our block, the downward strike of the arms, that block foot and those arms striking simultaneously. We get a lot of great return energy from the ground. This is where the breaks happen, right? We know block equals break, and as he transitions through this stride, we get a really nice sharp angle of takeoff. I mean, for the amount of speed he has to be able to take off on that angle is an exceptional control of his center of mass as well as strength and power. I hope you learned a little bit today. That's the goal here at Project Pure Athlete, is learn. But learn and pass on the message. If you found this video useful, make sure you check out the other ones here at Project Pure Athlete. We're blowing through a bit of a breakdown series. I'm going to be getting into some other types of content down the road, and I want you to be aware of them. So make sure you click the like button here. This helps the channel out a great deal. Check out and subscribe. And if you take an extra second or so, click that notification bell so you're notified when we drop videos here. This is Coach Ty of Project Pure Athlete. They call me the Jump Guy. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and we'll see you in the next one.